What we're going to talk about today is the Aldelo Express labor module. We're going to talk first about some simple facts with regard to labor. First off, is labor is the fastest way that a restaurant or a business owner can affect their bottom line. They can look at their flow of traffic. They can look at the amount of business they're doing and adjust their labor accordingly. Either bring somebody else in or send somebody home. But labor is the fastest way to affect their bottom line profits. Number two is labor can get out of hand quicker than any other expense. They can spend more money or waste more money in labor quick than any other area of their operation. So it can get out of hand if they're not on top of it. Our system helps them stay on top of it. And therefore, it can be, or labor can be, the most controllable expense. They can really affect their entire operation just by being on top of their labor and their labor situation. Aldelo Express does come with a labor scheduling module. It is part of the labor module. So you have the ability with Aldelo Express to have clock in and clock out, and of course do the time card and send those time cards to a payroll company. You have that ability in the system. But what you also have is an absolutely fabulous labor scheduling module that you can then use to control that labor. So here are some questions that you're going to want to have for a return on investment. Some things that you could qualify to make sure that that company or that operation can use the labor scheduling. And I'm going to say, first off, the number of employees. If they have 10 or more employees, it's absolutely a must. They really need to do a labor scheduling through the point of sale. It's a little bit more time consuming if you do it by hand at this level, which is the next question. Who does the payroll? Generally, it's going to be an accountant or some outside service. But if they're still doing it through QuickBooks or something internally, they're spending a lot of time doing this, and a labor scheduler will help them. How often is payroll done? Uh, when I hear this question, I think of Disney here in Orlando. They employ 50,000 or so people, and they do their payroll every week. So imagine how much work that is for that company to do that payroll. So the more often the restaurant does payroll, absolutely the more work it is. So what do they use now? Or what do they intend to use if they're a new store or new operation to do their labor scheduling? It's a lot of times it's pen and paper. If they're trying to be electronic, they may go to something like Excel, which is still not really controlling the labor. It's calculating the labor and forecasting it, but it's not anywhere near the controls that we're talking about with the Aldelo Express. So, how much they were spending in overtime? They probably don't know the answer to this, but it is a controllable expense when you do schedule enforcement. If they don't have a labor scheduler built into their system, then they are not controlling the overtime the way they should. Next up is, how do they stop employees from riding the clock? And they're going to be like, what do you mean? Well, what happens is employees come into the operation to go to work. They go and punch in first thing. Then they go do their hair. Then they take a smoke break. Then they go to the bathroom and they spend 10 or 15 minutes riding the clock before they get to work. If they're supposed to arrive at 3, they'll be there at 2:30, 2:45, and be riding that clock the whole time. The employee scheduler stops that. So what is their current labor cost from their point of sale? from their P&L. They probably don't know, and they're probably going to guess. Just know that the National Restaurant Association says quick service should be 25%. That's the goal, and that table service 30 to 40%. Know your numbers going in so that you'll know if they're really having any clue. A lot of times, restaurant owners just don't really know, and they'll guess. But these are the numbers that the Restaurant Association says that they should be at based upon the type of operation. So let's take a look at a $500,000 a year restaurant. That is not a huge operation. If you see that they are saying their labor in quick service is 30% or more, you know that you have a little wiggle room. You know that you can help them with that expense. But just 1% savings on a $500,000 restaurant is $5,000 in additional profit. Now, that alone justifies the expense of the point of sale system. When you look at the hardware they have to purchase, the software is no charge. All they have to do is process. So this one area can over justify the entire investment for the point of sale system just by a 1% savings. So how do they get that 1%? What does that really equate to down to the bottom line? So let's take a look at and use $15 an hour. Now, they may not be at $15 an hour yet, but this is a number that they're scared of. This is what they keep hearing about. There's a lot of conversation now about moving minimum wage or the base pay to a $15 an hour rate. That's 25 cents a minute. So if you do 5 minutes early and late, that is that scenario I gave you of people coming in, clocking in early, and then going and riding the clock. Let's just say that 5 minutes early and then clocking out 5 minutes late. A simple 10 minutes a day is the scenario. Now, I've used this with restaurant owners and restaurateurs, and they would laugh at me and go, oh, I know it's a lot more than 5 minutes. I know they're clocking in 10, 15 minutes early. Well, just use the 5 minutes. Don't get too crazy with them, and don't let them get too out of line here. Stick with 5 minutes early and 5 minutes late, a total of 10 minutes. Do that 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and that equates to $650 a year. If you have just 8 employees, not 10, just 8 employees doing this, that's $5,200 in lost profit, or just over 1% on that $500,000 restaurant. So this does work. The math works on this. So by 5 minutes early and late, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 8 employees doing that, there's your 1%. Just that one aspect cost justifies the entire operation, the entire new point of sale system. Learn how to speak this type of language with the restaurant owner. This makes sense to them. This type of return on investment, really, they equate to this. They can justify it. They can see this. So get used to this and use these numbers to your advantage. So obviously, labor laws vary by state. Labor rules vary by employer within those states. And then, but Aldelo Express is flexible enough to meet all those requirements. We've built the system based upon the rules and laws that are in effect now for all 50 states. If there is something we don't have, let us know. But we've covered pretty much all the different laws, and with regard to breaks and overtime and those things, that's already built into the system. So how do you set this up? Well, in the back office cloud, you go to settings, store config, and then there's one called staff config. Then payroll options, time card options, and POS options. We'll go into those here in a minute. Then you go to staff. Employees, you enter the employees there, you enter the base information, and then show extended settings to get into a little more of the HR type thing that you're going to need to do. But yes, you can then get into the extended settings. Then you go to staff, and then there's a scheduling tab, scheduling section. You go there. I'll show you here in a minute how easy it is to create that schedule. Then go to settings, analytics, and then under labor, you have all these different reports. You're going to have a forecast. You'll have schedules. You'll have reports about people who are missing lunch and breaks. That's a big deal in some states where you have required breaks that must be taken. So this will tell you, a report will tell you who's been missing those breaks. And of course, there's store-wide work schedules. In addition to, there's individual schedules that can then be emailed to the employee. So the email is where the employee gets their schedule. So I'm going to take a break here just for a second and see if there's any questions before I move into the back office.